What's up, everybody? It's Mother's Day here, about 8:30 or so in the morning. I know the sun's a little bit harsh. The last video I posted, it was right over my shoulder. I apologize about that, but anyway, it's been a few days since I've shot any arrows. I was on vacation with my wife. We had our anniversary, went to wine country, California, and just took a couple days off. So I felt that this was a good time to get back and establish a baseline. Having not shot my bow for a few days, I'm going to come back and test effective range. Shooting a little hot right now at 40, so I'm going to double check that, make sure that it's not just me before I actually start the test. But again, having not shot for a few days, this is kind of the point where I really don't have too many out-of-town trips where I'm not going to be able to bring my bow along and practice. So I want to get that established baseline from having not shot. And really it could simulate a little bit, you know, when we're out hunting and you don't shoot your bow for a few days, similar things come into play. So I want to see where I'm at. I'm going to measure, I'm going to track everything. I got my arrows numbered, so I'll shoot my arrows incrementally. If you're familiar with the Alpha Bow Hunting coaching system, you know, we encourage you to shoot in 5-yard increments, one arrow at a time, working yourself back until you leave your prescribed your group size. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Before I do though, you know, having been in California and toured some of the vineyards, it was really cool. I got to see one vineyard that had some history, if you will, but also had some nice mule deer mounts in there, and it was just, I got to wet my palate a little bit, if you will, with some hunting culture. There's a gentleman that had given a plaque to one of the vineyard owner's sons, and it wasn't a plaque, it was actually a framed display, if you will, probably about this big. I'll see if I can post a picture on here, full of arrowheads that he had found as he was traveling the country. He passed away, I guess, recently. That's when, before he passed away, he gave away that display to the vineyard owner's son, but traveled all across the Midwest and the West, hiking around, exploring, and to see a display like this was pretty cool. So check it out. I mean, I enjoyed it. I definitely tried to ask as many questions as I was allowed to. Again, being on vacation with my wife, didn't want to overdo it. But anyway, I'm going to get back to shooting. Like I said, I'm going to check my 40-yard pin here as I've warmed up. I've shot about 10 arrows this morning is all. A couple up close. I always like to shoot my first few arrows up close on the bag or block, just to get my my rhythm, if you will, make sure everything's aligned, make sure everything feels good, and then I'll just, you know, work back a little bit. So I'm going to get back to the testing. I'm going to show you how I measure and track. Got my shooting log with me, so let's go ahead and check it out. All right, we're gonna grab the notebook and head down and jot down our measurements and our distances, where arrows are impacting, and track that, and keep going. So bring the camera with me. All right, so pretty obvious here. Kind of a lot of my grouping is hitting a touch left. So, but what we're gonna do here is we've got 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 we shot there. Let's see. Zero number 1. It's 3/4 inch off the dot. Straight high. I'm going to put an arrow where it hit. And number 2, I believe this is 2. I think this is 3. 2. 2 3/4 off the dot. High left. Now, before I shot this arrow, that knock was bumped out just a little bit. So I'm going to mark that note. I'm going to change this knock. I think I hit it on the last round. So that's why we track and number arrows. Number 3, 1.25 inches. Left, high left. Arrow number 4. Just shy of 2 inches. More 2 inches left. Number 5. 2.25 inches left. About 2.25 inches low left. So I'm going to continue, even though I'm already starting to see some trends that the arrows are impacting left. I'm going to continue to work back and test. Then I'm going to come back, reevaluate, possibly move my sight settings a little bit, check some components, and maybe do it again. So that's how the process works. Like I said, I'll track everything, so I know now what numbered arrow it was. So arrow number 1 was shot at 20 yards. Number 2, obviously, like I said, might have a knock issue because I dinged it on the last time. So that one I may just call that knock right away and continue on. Everything else was left to low left as I went through. Other things to keep in mind, depending on what type of sight you use. I'm using a 5-pin sight, so I'm gapping pins. So a lot of times those 25 distances, 35 distances, 45 distances aren't as tight to the dot because you don't have a direct reference to aim with. Not making excuses, I'm just saying you'll see your patterns go down, that a lot of times maybe it's a color that you don't like as much. Maybe the red you don't like on the target, or the yellow you don't like if you got multiple colors on your sight. So all that stuff's important to note. You need to know that. You need to know how you aim on a dot as opposed to a 3D target. So I'm going to continue with this process, and like I said, possibly make an adjustment after I go these next 6 arrows and do it again. But that's how I track my baseline effective range as I'm working back. I'm trying to keep everything within 4 inches of the center dot. So again, even after I go out of that 4 inches, I'm going to shoot an arrow or 2 further. And a lot of times you won't know. If you're shooting 6 arrows at a time like this, I may have an arrow that leaves that 4-inch group with my first or second arrow of the 6, and then I continue on. Well, I'll go back and double check that, but it's good to track and shoot further so you can project growth, know where you need to evaluate and see how close you are really. Because you might, like I said, you might have an arrow that's 4.25, 4.5 out at 60 yards, but then at 70, 75, and 80, you're still in that 4-inch group size. So it might have just been one arrow that's not a great shot. Not making excuses. It's important to evaluate and know yourself. So test yourself, track your results, number your arrows, help you with the process. Otherwise, shooting one arrow at a time, coming back and forth, could take a little while. So I'm going to continue on. So, didn't make the best shot on that last one. It shows that was at 75 yards. But let's continue here. We started that round at 50. Again, starting to see some. I do want to say that between the first two rounds, I did put a couple clicks in my sight, and you can tell that everything got brought back together. So I just, everything felt like it was moving. I was on the left side, so I just bumped my sight over. All right, so arrow number one at 50. Find arrow number one down here. We are just 2 3/4 inches. And it's going to be straight low. Arrow number two was also low. There it is. Arrow number two is probably 1 3/4 inches low. Again, swap the knock on that one. Oh. Back to where it was. 2 inches. 3/4. Alright, kind of lined that dot back up based off that last hole we had at 1 3/4. So we're on to arrow number 3. Right here. 1 1/4 low. Arrow 4. This right here. 2, 3. Here we are. Okay, 4. Maybe just 4 1/8, but it's out. Okay, 4 1/8, straight low. All right. 3 1/2 at 70, low left, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 1/4 at 75, low right. All right, so you kind of see the process. Like I said, I'm gonna double check some sight settings. Everything was starting to hit low. Once we started adjusting the sight tape, like I said, I got my bottom pin set at 60. So then at 65, 70, 75, everything was starting to hit low. So I'm gonna double check the tape. I'm pretty sure that I need to change that. But again, that's why we do this. That's why I test. I'm gonna make sure we eliminate all the variables and get our baseline, come back and make some adjustments, continue practicing, maybe pick this back up in a week or two and test again, so that way I've addressed the issues I need to, called out arrows or nocks components that I need to, and just keep practicing. Because like I said, last year when I was doing this right before hunting season, it was between 85 and 100 yards that I would be able to get before I'd have my first arrow leave. So 80 to 90 yard max effective range based off this testing parameters. So right now I had, like I said, had my first one by 1/8 of an inch leave at 65. Otherwise it would have been 75, which is close. Having not shot a lot of distance over the winter, that doesn't get me nervous. It just shows me that I need to continue to progress and practice a little bit more. I'd like to be in that 80 to 90 yard range again with my tested max adjusted effective range, so that way most of my shot scenarios in that 55, 60 yards and in are green light. Anyway, that's the process. I'm going to keep shooting some more today, make a couple tweaks. I'm going to double check some sight settings. I'm going to shoot a couple groups probably at 80 or 85 yards and get a grouping average and measure that so I can double check the marks on my sight tape. But like I said, this is just part of the process. This is some of the things that you should be doing. And like I said, taking notes is probably the biggest one that I could encourage you to do. So the last thing I do here after I do this, I take some notes as to what I need to fix, what I need to adjust, so that way after I practice today, if I happen to forget, and maybe I do some closer range practice the next couple sessions. When I go back to do this, I say, oh, I haven't changed my sight tape yet. I need to go back and double check and change my sight tape. So those are the things I need to, you take notes and you don't make mistakes, right? Make the mistakes now, so that way when it comes hunting time, you're not making mistakes in the field. So anyway, appreciate you following along. Got a lot lined out this week. Excited on the hunting rig. Got the lift and wheels put on that. So that's kind of the first phase of the modifications that we're doing. On the second phase, it's going to be roof rack, rock sliders, and a few other things internally. So anyway, stay tuned for that stuff, as well as I just get excited with that. Like I said, it's kind of a kid in a candy store feel. I don't go out and buy myself a lot of stuff as far as, you know, junk, right? Video games, things I don't need. I get stuff for hunting. I get stuff to get me prepped for that, and it's stuff for the family. So to have a personal project like that I'm dedicating some money and some time to, really excited about it. So anyway, track your stuff, stay tuned. We'll see you guys soon.